He was sitting in a courtroom, accused of a crime that could take away his freedom forever. His lawyer had failed him. The jury was unconvinced. The case was lost, but then, the one who saved him wasn't a witness, wasn't a lawyer, wasn't even human. It was his dog. The room was silent. The kind of silence that presses against your chest, heavy and unrelenting, like the whole world is holding its breath. In that silence, you could hear the creak of the wooden benches as strangers leaned forward. You could hear the nervous shuffle of reporters gripping their pens, cameras poised like weapons ready to capture a single moment that might change everything. You could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fan, cutting the air in steady rhythm, as though it were keeping time in a place where time itself had stopped. The judge adjusted his glasses. His eyes, weary from decades of cases, swept across the packed courtroom. His black robe swayed slightly as he shifted in his chair, but the tremor in his hand as he touched his papers betrayed something more than age. This was not just another case, not just another day in the endless march of the law. He cleared his throat. His voice, steady but heavy, carried through the tense air. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his tone more human than official. "Today we will hear a testimony unlike any this court has ever seen." And with those words, the entire room turned. Every gaze, every breath, every ounce of attention shifted toward the center. At the heart of it all was not a lawyer, not a polished attorney, armed with silver words and sharpened logic, not a witness, dragged in with chains of paperwork and questions, not even the victim himself. At the center was a dog. A large German shepherd sat beside the man accused. His fur was marked with scars, old and new, etched like battlefields into his skin. His chest rose and fell with steady control, but his eyes told the story of every wound, every night, every fight to survive. Those eyes locked on the man beside him, steady, fierce, loyal, and without ever speaking, they said what no lawyer had been able to say. The case had been slipping away. The defense attorney had tried, voice rising until veins stood out in his neck. He had pulled out documents, argued evidence, tried to patch holes in a story riddled with shadows. But the jury wasn't convinced. The attackers had painted the man as reckless, the dog as dangerous. The lawyer's words were not enough. The man's future had been unraveling, inch by inch, until there was the dog, not sworn in, not questioned, not speaking, just present, a living, breathing reminder of survival, of loyalty, of truth too deep for words. Because this dog, this scarred, loyal German shepherd, had done what no lawyer could. But to understand that silence, to understand why the judge's voice trembled, why strangers in the gallery leaned forward as if leaning closer would help them feel what was unfolding, we have to go back. Back to the beginning. It was a winter night in America, a night when fog clung low to the ground, and headlights carved tunnels through the darkness. The man had been driving home from his job at the hardware store. His shift had run late. His body was tired, his mind numb from the weight of bills, the emptiness of his small apartment, the ache of a life that felt stuck. He drove the same back roads he always did, roads lined with frost-tipped trees and quiet ditches that swallowed sound. That's when he heard it, a sound faint enough to dismiss. A whimper, maybe the wind. He almost drove on. But then it came again, sharper this time, not just a sound but a cry. He pulled over. Gravel crunched beneath his boots as he stepped out, breath rising in small clouds against the frozen air. And there, down in a shallow ditch, half hidden by mud and frost, was the shape of a dog. A German shepherd. His body trembled with exhaustion. His fur was filthy, matted, streaked with blood. Scars lined his ribs, his legs. A collar, frayed and broken, hung loosely from his neck. The man froze. He'd seen stray dogs before, but never one like this. Not one that looked so close to the edge of death, yet so stubbornly alive. He crouched, lowering himself slowly. The dog lifted his head, just barely, and their eyes met. And in that moment, everything changed. It wasn't pity. It wasn't just compassion. It was recognition. Two broken souls, both scarred in different ways, both tired of fighting, seeing the cracks in each other and knowing without a word that they were the same. The man whispered, his voice low, steady. "It's okay, buddy. You're safe now." The dog stiffened, body ready for another blow, another cruelty. But then, something gave way. His head dropped again, not in defeat, but in trust. And the man reached for him. He lifted the broken shepherd into his arms. The dog was heavy, every muscle trembling, every breath labored. The man wrapped his jacket around him, shielding him from the cold. The smell of blood and dirt clung to the fabric, but beneath it, the man swore he could smell something else too. Hope. The days that followed tested both of them. The veterinarian shook her head when she first examined the dog. "He's been through hell," she whispered. Her fingers traced the old wounds like reading braille. Bite marks, rope burns, a half-healed bullet wound. She didn't ask where he'd come from. She didn't need to. The scars told their own story. Most creatures wouldn't have survived, but this one had, and the man stayed by his side. He slept on the floor next to him, waking to every whimper in the night. He coaxed him to eat, one bite at a time, whispering encouragement like prayers. He offered his hand again and again, letting the shepherd decide when to trust, when to lean close. And slowly the dog healed. His fur regained its sheen. His body filled out, muscles returning where bones had once jutted sharp. His eyes cleared, though shadows lingered in them whenever the world grew too loud. And one day the man gave him a name, Justice, because that's what he deserved, because that's what had been denied to him for too long. And the name fit. Justice learned to walk beside the man without fear. He learned the sound of laughter again. He learned that not every touch hurt, not every human betrayed. And when the night came, the night that changed everything, Justice proved exactly why his name mattered. It was late. The man had walked to the corner store, a bag of groceries swinging in his hand, Justice trotting beside him. The alley they cut through was narrow, lined with dumpsters and flickering lamps. That's when they appeared. Two men stepped out of the shadows. Their words were slurred with anger, their faces twisted with greed. They wanted money. They wanted the bag. The man stammered, clutching the bag tighter. His voice faltered. And then they lunged. He stumbled back, fear racing through him. His heart hammered, his breath caught. But Justice moved first. With a roar that shattered the night, Justice launched forward. His body, once broken and scarred, was now a storm unleashed. His teeth bared, his eyes blazing, his loyalty forged into pure power. One attacker fell back instantly, tripping over the curb. The other swung wildly, but Justice was faster. He clamped onto the man's arm, not tearing, not killing, just holding, pinning him down with the weight of a creature that knew exactly how to protect without destroying. The struggle ended as quickly as it began. And when the sirens wailed, when red and blue lights splashed against brick walls, Justice stood tall. His chest heaved, but his eyes were steady, sharp. He had done what he was born to do. He had protected. But heroes are not always welcomed. The attackers twisted the story. They claimed the man had provoked them, that the dog had been trained to attack. Lawyers painted Justice as violent, unpredictable, dangerous. And so, the trial began. Day after day, the man sat in the courtroom, hands trembling, as lawyers debated his future. Evidence was questioned, witnesses doubted. Every scar on Justice's body was twisted into proof that he was a weapon, not a survivor. The man's lawyer tried. He spoke of loyalty, of survival, of self-defense, but words weren't enough. The jury shifted uneasily. Doubt hung in the air like smoke. And then came the silence of a courtroom already leaning toward guilty, until the judge's words shifted everything. "Today," he said, voice thick with weight, "we will hear a testimony unlike any other." And Justice was led forward. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He didn't need to. The scars on his body told their own story. His calm posture spoke of discipline, not danger. And the way he looked at the man beside him, unshakable, unwavering, filled with a love that could not be faked. When one of the attackers sneered from across the room, Justice didn't react, didn't even growl. He simply pressed his scarred head against the man's leg. And in that moment, the courtroom broke. Jurors shifted, eyes wet. Reporters lowered their pens. Even the judge's throat caught as he cleared it. Because everyone could see the truth. This wasn't a weapon. This wasn't a beast. This was love. This was loyalty. This was a bond stronger than any law. The verdict came later, wrapped in procedure. But the real decision had already been made. Not in the law books, not in arguments. In the silence of a courtroom where a dog spoke without a single word. And when the gavel fell, when the man's shoulders shook with relief, justice didn't bark or leap. He simply pressed closer, his scars no longer marks of suffering, but symbols of survival. The crowd left. The headlines were written, but none of that mattered. Because long before the trial, long before the verdict, their bond had already been written. Not in law, but in loyalty, not in testimony, but in trust, not in words, but in the silent, unshakable language of love. If this story touched your heart, if you believe loyalty like this deserves to be remembered, share this video with someone who loves dogs as much as you do. And don't forget to subscribe, because more stories of love, loyalty, and survival are coming.